like, and I remember all the power went out. Like it was just like, like literally, like out of a movie. I swear to God, I thought the world was going to end. I'm like literally, I was like, okay, this is it. I guess this is it. This is how it goes. And I mean, like literally. And I just waited for like just to be vaporized. You know what I mean? Like at that point in time. It didn't happen. We were watching the television. Everything went out. Then everything came back on. And then that was when we saw like there was like literally debris everywhere. The television is just reporting like, I mean, it was sirens, like it was just insanity. And that was when I realized that we had to get out of there. And you know, it's like it's weird how this happens, but like there are angels in this world. And I'm walking down the stairs in the building, trying to figure out how we're gonna evacuate or whatever. Because I remember walking downstairs and going to the front door and opening the front door. It literally looked like, I mean, there was paper and all kinds of stuff flying all in the air. It was like, it was just, there was so much dust and debris in the air. I think you saw the video. It was like, you could see there's just like particles of stuff like in the air. And I just happened to run into this guy who had that truck that we got on. And I ran into him like as I'm walking into the building. He ran into me on, you want to come? And I was like, yeah, let me grab my family and then we'll get on the truck and then we just can like hightail it out of here. That's what I was talking about the angel thing, because I was like, literally like, where did this guy come from? I mean, he didn't even live in the building. Like, I don't even know who he was. He's just like some guy with a truck. And like, as if he was waiting for the bomb to go off, you know what I mean? Like, he literally was just like, hey, I got a truck, we're going. And I was like, great. And then, so I grabbed Dash and Kira and we jumped on the truck and we headed out of there from that point on. So yeah, it was crazy.
Anthony Paris, this is for you. While Anthony Paris was evacuating the area Ground Zero with his wife and son on 9/11/2001, I was inside the office building of Shareholders Communications, the company where I was working in Jersey City Exchange Place, watching the post-plane crash drama unfold. I was a resident of Jersey City at the time, renting a $900 a month studio apartment at Cole Street. I took the bus that Tuesday morning. The travel time to Exchange Place was about 15 minutes. I arrived at work at about 8:30. Then I went into the cafeteria to grab a cup of coffee. A black male employee who was sitting looking at the Manhattan skyline, which was perpendicular to our office, said a plane just crashed into the World Trade Building. I walked over to the window to see what had just happened. I did not hear or feel the effects of the plane crash prior to looking at the World Trade Building, as New Jersey is facing northeast to the towers, so at that angle I could not see the gaping hole of entry of the plane. Then slowly I saw plumes of billowy black smoke and white paper floating out of the windows. I don't remember whether many other people were inside the cafeteria with me experiencing the event, as a somewhat universal phenomenal sea change that had changed all human life had occurred. Then the supervisor announced that all employees should take their seats at their cubicles to begin work. After a few minutes, all employees were told to then evacuate the building. Practically every employee rushed to the elevators and left the building as far as I knew. Only two supervisors and myself stood watching the reports on television in a conference room. One speckled supervisor said, "We just saw history." At that time, I didn't know what to think in terms of processing in my mind what had just happened in terms of the crash occurring, or that even a terrorist attack had happened. After watching more television accounts of the crash with the two supervisors for about 20 minutes or so, I was told to leave the building for my safety, somewhat rudely by a supervisor. I took my satchel and boarded the elevator downstairs, got outside, and I stood outside with the crowd staring at what was the worst terrorist attack on American soil after Pearl Harbor in 1944. Some people were running looking terrified as if Gorija had emerged from the depths. Others, mostly white males, were laughing as human bodies plummeted to their deaths, falling against the bright blue sky and black steel and glass of what was then the World Trade Center. Mostly, I could hear people make and slight groaning noises and silences as the thud of bodies hit the ground. Mind you, I was across the Hudson River in a different state watching human life succumb to the fire, heat, and hopelessness of there being no way to rescue them from a premature death. Then the towers collapsed. A shiver went down my spine as I saw the gray smoke billowing up, and the last thing I saw was the analog radio needle fall into nothingness. You have to be at least 40 years old to understand the depth of what I've just said. The Jersey City police told everyone to evacuate the area. Afterwards, I started walking south back to my apartment. As I was walking, there were people walking towards the Grove Street station who hadn't seen what had happened live in vivo. They were just talking about what happened. I stopped to eat a croissant and coffee at a restaurant and watch the aftermath of 9/11 on a large flat-screen television set, trying to process what had just happened. Later on that evening, my girlfriend, Professor Deborah Hilborn Davis, called me on the phone, and I recounted to her what happened as she was again feeling tired and fatigued because of a then undiagnosed thyroid condition, which at times, as a result, I would hear silence on the telephone line as Deborah drifted in and out of consciousness. There was only one TV channel to watch, which was WCBS. That night, the replayed up-close image of the plane crashing into the World Trade Center was repeated over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. It also rained that first night, thunder and lightning, to add to the fact that I was living alone, man alone. I spoke to my beautiful mother, my beautiful aunt, and my two beautiful brothers who were safely further away from ground zero on the phone that day. My mother was working in Long Island. My aunt was at home in Queens Village. My brother was working for Stone Source, which is at 16th and Park Avenue. My brother Alberto was working at Citicorp in Long Island City. Sometime later, I spoke to a now ex-friend and roommate, Amy Prosen, who was living in the Upper West Side on 79th Street, who joked about moving to Canada for her safety. Edward Rivera, an ex-friend and music colleague from the first band Broken Glass, commented on the plumes of smoke rising from the ashes of the debris as we were traveling in his car to Garden City, Long Island in the evenings. Daniel Obella, the director of the Philip K. Dick Film Festival, friend, confidant, and musical colleague, told me he actually slept through that morning until about 10:30, waking up to find out what had happened earlier that morning. And my former girlfriend, roommate, workmate, one and only love, Leslie Voorhees Napoles, told me later she was in the subway at the time of the attacks and broke the heel of her shoe in the melee inside the subway. After a few months, I moved back to Jersey City in 2002 to a one-bedroom apartment inside of a house on 7th Street, paying $700 a month to a Mr. Stan Miss. In what could be called a dining room, there were two windows, and at night I would play my acoustic guitar, my Yamaha acoustic guitar, and look at the lights used to pay homage to the dead on 9/11. Not knowing, living on unemployment at the time, what my future would become post 9/11 2002 America. We had the dot-com bubble, a massive recession, and since then, a spiraling downward trend economy. We're talking the last 23 years, which would now lead to a worldwide virus, COVID-19, an omnipresent war with China and Russia, rampant homelessness throughout the entire country, throughout the entire world, disease, mental illness, what's called massive crime, what's called inflation, and the illusion of poverty, and trillions of deaths that has turned life in America into a postmodern nightmare reality. In 2005, I was working for a British engineering firm called Halcro in the financial district, where years before in the 1990s in the same building, again, my then ex-girlfriend, Professor Deborah Hilborn, who, after being pregnant with a fetus that she later aborted, had worked earlier as an administrative assistant. There was a black female who was sitting inside of the cafeteria during my lunch break. She was looking out at the vacant area where the World Trade used to be. She was a temp as I, only she hadn't recovered from the trauma of 9/11. She told me briefly that she had to run for her life witnessing the crash as a survivor. She had a vacant look in her eye. Her body was somewhat limp and weak from the aftermath of post 9/11, the VUE. I wonder years later, did Anthony Paris think of his old friend whom he had played in a band with, attended my wedding in 1988 in Queens Village, New York, played shows with in NYC, including a show with Dan Abella's band, Second Coming on the Deuce and 42nd Street, cooked dinner for my wife Susan E. and I at his family's abode, recorded a spectacular demo tape with Frank Usamant of the ska band, New York ska band Funk Face, on bass at Calliope Studio in Manhattan, where incidentally De La Vida recorded theirs as well. Hung out with drummer John Stainer of alternative bands Helmet and math rock bands Tomahawk and Battles with my ex-wife Susan E. and I when we were living in Jackson Heights, Queens in 83rd Street. Pussy Galore, who liked my music. Walking in the street in Greenwich Village where Hollywood actors Sean Penn and Timothy Hutton were standing at the curb with paparazzi taking photos as Tony and I laughed at the Société, the Spectacle, and went on our way. Or perhaps the abduction of an Asian man into an awaiting white van in the street at night. Or Anthony Paris sitting alone on a bench at the Astor Police subway station, looking somewhat saddened by the present, calling me while my ex-wife Susan and I were dining at a Japanese dojo restaurant to my surprise. I could reverie about what any past expectation could adhere to as a memory, or recollect Anthony Paris asking me one day many years later walking on a Manhattan street without any salutation regarding his person, "Which way is Broadway?" They say your life flashes before you die.